very first sight of him.
Oh my god!
Much better manners than Miggs, though. He's the main event you'd expect him to be, with a gaze that pierces through the camera as much as it does his plexiglass.
Oh, so good!
Hey guys, my name's Dan, and today's reaction comes from Dead Meat. This is the Silence of the Lambs 1991 kill count. Now, for full disclosure, and I know all of you are probably gonna hate me for this, but this is the first time seeing this movie. I know, I probably should have seen this movie a long-ass time ago, but the important thing is I did just see it in preparation for this kill count. I got a whole bunch of notes ready for you guys, so we can talk about it throughout the kill count, and then afterwards as well, to sort of wrap things up, and I hope you guys enjoy this along with me. But before we get into it though, please do check all those links I have for you down in the description below, more specifically the Dead Meat one. If you haven't already, it's a great way to support the entire Dead Meat team, and a great and easy way to support me is to go right below this video, click all those buttons down there, because I'll let you see future reactions that I do, but also it's my channel to grow. And without any further ado, let's go.
Welcome to the kill count, Clarice, where
Oh!
we tally up the victims.
Oh, I love it!
Movies and show you how they were made.
Oh my! Oh, he's doing a thing!
Sorry, I'm James A. Janice, and today we're looking at The Silence of the Lambs, released
I
in
love it.
1991. It's based on the book of the same name, which was Thomas Harris's follow-up to Red Dragon. But this isn't a sequel to Manhunter. Rather, it's an adaptation of the follow-up book to that movie's source material. Silence of the Lambs follows FBI training Clarice Starling, played by a 27-year-old Jodie Foster. Starling is a gifted student who's pulled into the hunt for Buffalo Bill, a serial killer with a penchant for skinning his victims. Unlike Manhunter's Will Graham, Clarice has no real authority, and is constantly framed in claustrophobic, overbearing shots. It's way different than the open environments we often saw Graham in. Clarice is always underestimated by the men around her, and she has to constantly prove herself to them. And this theme isn't subtle. I promise that if this movie came out today, a bunch of grifters on YouTube would be yelling that it's woke. Aiding in Starling's investigation is Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a brilliant psychiatrist and chronic people eater. Here, Lecter is played by Anthony Hopkins, who nabbed a Best Leading Actor Oscar for the role,
As well he
despite only
should.
24 minutes of screen time. In fact, Silence of the Lambs cleaned up at the Academy Awards. It's the third of only 3 movies to win the so-called Big Five, taking home Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Actor, and a writing win for Best Adapted Screenplay. It is the only horror movie to ever win the Oscar for Best Picture, which
And it's very well deserved.
I think speaks to its broad appeal. As mentioned in the Manhunter kill count, despite the 2 movies sharing characters, they're entirely different in pretty much every other way. I think Silence is a more mainstream movie, and that's not a judgment of quality, I just don't know how else to put it. Manhunter is an art piece compared to this film. Compared to Michael Mann's film, the characters in Silence are much more overstated. Buffalo Bill's more of a bombastic maniac than Francis Dollarhide, and characters like Crawford and Chilton stand out a lot more, as opposed to being just, you know, guys. I mean, Farina rules, but still, he's kind of just a guy. As much as I love Manhunter, there's no denying that Silence of the Lambs is awesome. There's a reason that every other scene in this thing has been parodied and referenced to high hell. Hopkins' Hannibal is an icon of horror villains, and Clarice Starling is one of my favorite film protagonists ever. It's not only considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time, but one of the greatest movies, period. It's about damn time we cover it on this show.
Hell yeah.
Silence of the Lambs have more... Oh, sorry.
What? What's the problem?
I was wondering when you'd call.
Hello, Jamothy.
Oh,
I
no!
hear there's been another
Messed up Zoran!
incident. Imagine my disappointment
The hair's
that you
perfect.
didn't come and see me.
And I won't be, you sick son of a bitch. But I do need your expertise.
Well, that does sound like quite the pickle.
Not at all. I can send you everything you need from right here, thanks to our partner, WeTransfer.
Oh.
WeTransfer helps 80 million users a month share and send big files all around the world, and it's made for both individuals and teams.
I see, that is a solution. Ah, but this is still such sensitive material, and sending it over the internet where anyone could intercept it.
Please, I'm no fool. WeTransfer allows you to password protect any transfer.
Ah, I see.
Oh.
Nonetheless, I'm afraid I'm not one for all this data sharing. Wouldn't want my personal information going to the
But
wrong
wait.
people.
But wait.
Well, then we're in luck, because WeTransfer doesn't collect your personal info.
Oh, I see.
Any more objections?
No. Nope.
Great. Hey, Fiona, could you get those files to Zoran, please? So you can edit that to the numbers bit by tomorrorow, right?
Oh yeah, that's no problem.
Thanks.
Oh, okay.
Editors have been swamped with production chaos from hell.
Right. How's that going, by the way?
Oh, great. The first episode released last Sunday, and it was about Poltergeist. And
Nice.
this Sunday, we'll have an episode on Troll 2. And viewers can use the link in the description to go to our Production Tales from Hell portal, where they can download an exclusive
Oh!
zine with BTS and custom artwork.
That's
As well as
awesome!
commentary tracks featuring me, Chelsea, and Chauncey for each movie Production Tales is covering. Will the Silence of the Lambs have more kills
First off, before we move on from that, brilliant impersonation there from Zoran. He absolutely nailed Hannibal there.
than Oscar wins? Let's find out and get to them. The kills, not the Oscars.
Yep. Gotcha.
The movie begins in the woods, near Quantico. It's the home of the FBI, where Clarice Starling is making her way through a training montage, complete with a Rocky sweatshirt and Rocky sweat stains. Before she can reach the Philadelphia Museum, she's summoned by Jack Crawford, the head of the Behavioral Science Unit. Starling is something of a star pupil and a former student of Crawford's.
You grilled me pretty hard, as I recall, on the Bureau's Civil Rights record in the Hoover years. I gave you an A.
A-, sir.
Also extremely likable right off the bat. Crawford has a
Absolutely.
little extra credit for her, helping him out with his latest project. He's interviewing imprisoned serial killers, just like Jonathan Groff in Mindhunter.
And one of the great things that I really enjoyed about that little part, because she's walking into this into the room. She doesn't see him yet, but then she'll see just all these newspaper clippings and everything that they have on Buffalo Bill, so you can kind of see where the movie is going.
It's fitting since both characters are based on the same real-life FBI agent, John E. Douglas. In fact, Crawford's actor Scott Glenn spent 4 days with Douglas as preparation for this role. Crawford says there's one killer who refuses to talk to them.
The psychiatrist, Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal the cannibal.
I always wondered if Hannibal only chose to eat people after realizing it'd make for a sweet rhyme. Crawford says he's sending Clarice for general purposes, but judging by the pictures on his wall, this probably has something to do with a killer they're trying to find named Buffalo Bill. When she gets to the sanitarium, its director Dr. Chilton assumes Crawford sent her because she's a pretty young thing that'll turn Hannibal on.
Oh, are you ever his taste?
Phrasing! Chilton
Yeah,
was a character
seriously,
in
dude.
Manhunter, but was largely forgettable there. Here, he's played by Anthony Heald, who makes him stand out with sleaze.
Will you be in Baltimore overnight? Because this can be quite a fun town if you have the right guide.
Dog, you
No.
couldn't even guide a boat without blowing yourself up.
Yeah,
Clarice
seriously.
manages to ditch the smarmy doctor, giving her one-on-one time with Hannibal's polite orderly Barney.
I'll be watching. You'll do fine.
As mentioned in the Manhunter kill count, this is Frankie Faison, playing a different character than he did in that movie. Thankfully, Barney will stick around for a couple more films. In stark contrast to the sterile white cell in Manhunter, in this movie, Hannibal is kept in a frickin' dungeon. It houses other inmates too, like multiple Migs, who's got a keen scent for sniffing out the worst things to say.
Ugh.
The
Ah!
row is Hannibal Lecter, who's inhumanly sinister from the very first sight of him.
Oh my god!
Much better manners than Miggs, though. He's the main event you'd expect him to be, with a gaze that pierces through the camera as much
Ooh.
as it does his plexiglass.
Oh, so
set.
good!
It was originally going to be kept behind bars, but director Jonathan Demme wasn't happy with how they obfuscated the actors. He worried it would ruin the intimacy of their scenes together. Production designer Chris Zia came up with the solution of a plexiglass cell. She also designed the dungeon based on a photo of where the Nuremberg war criminals were held before trial. The dungeon was a set built in the abandoned Westinghouse factory, while the institution's interiors were filmed at the Allegheny County Jail in Pittsburgh, where most of the movie was shot.
Oh,
Clarice
okay.
is obviously
Yeah, that
scared
makes
of
sense.
Hannibal, but nevertheless, she persists. That gets him to open up a bit, sniffing out her skincare routine and showing off his art.
That is the Duomo scene from the Belvedere.
What a refined young cannibal. She fumbles when she tries to transition to the business at hand, which gets Lecter roasting her like the meanest gay you've ever met.
You know what you look like to me with your good bag and your cheap shoes? You look like a rube.
He said that to her face. When she
Sure
still
did.
doesn't back down, he tries intimidation, telling her how he ate a census worker and the best way to make bubbles in a pool. Hopkins actually didn't intend for that noise to become such a thing.
It really is.
Just for a joke. I thought they'd cut it out.
He scares Clarice off, but on her way out, multiple Migs hits her with some pocket sand.
Oh!
Wait, God, that's
Ew!
not sand! Man, there's
Ew!
something about Migs.
Ew!
Indiscretion
So
offends
disgusting.
Hannibal, so he gives Clarice a tip, saying to look inside herself and seek out a patient of his named Miss Moffat. She heads to the library for the requisite microfilm research scene. Gotta love him, until she's interrupted by her friend Ardelia, played by Casey Lemons, who was last seen on the kill count to the OG Candyman. She tells Clarice she's got a call from Crawford, who informs her that multiple Migs is dead. He was convinced by Hannibal with words alone to swallow his own tongue. Damn, what can't you do with that mouth, Hanny boy?
Ah!
Clarice decodes Hannibal's riddle of looking inside herself to mean a place called Your Self Storage. There's a unit there registered to one Hester Moffat that's been sitting unused for years. The door to the place is jammed, and since the dude who owns it isn't any help, Clarice jacks herself to victory.
Yeah, it's a
wow,
driver,
really
apparently.
rubbed off on her. Or should I say rubbed one off on her. Inside the storage unit,
oh,
Clarice finds a
no,
car.
James!
Ain't got Leon
No!
King having steamy sex inside. Instead, it's got a headless body, as well as a bodiless head, later revealed to belong to Benjamin Raspail, a former patient of Hannibal's. Everyone involved in this movie, from Jodie Foster to writer Ted Talley, wanted to find the proper balance when it came to the story's horrific violence. They didn't want to shy away from it, but they also didn't want to be exploitative.
It's
Yeah,
possible
I
to
appreciated
do a
that.
picture that is about violence and not make it about getting off on the violence.
The dark subject matter caused Michelle Pfeiffer to turn down the role of Clarice and Gene Hackman to step away after being set to play Jack Crawford and direct.
Gene read the script and said, you know, this is too violent for me, I can't do it, and I'm walking away from it.
As a director, Hackman was replaced by the late Jonathan Demme.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Demme.
It was a weird choice since his earlier films were more comedic, but he also directed Stop Making Sense, the greatest concert film ever made, so he's unimpeachable to me. It ended up working for the cast and crew, who all said they had a great time thanks to Demme keeping things light on set.
The paradox of filming this was that it's such a dark film, and it was such a delightful experience for everybody.
It was a lot of fun.
Meanwhile, the role of Clarice went to Jodie Foster, who was just coming off an Oscar win for The Accused. Foster was a fan of the book and called up Orion Pictures when she found out they bought the rights from Dino De Laurentiis after Manhunter flopped. She was drawn to Clarice's quiet internal strength, especially after playing victims for so much of her career.
For me, the reason that it was so important to make this movie was that there was a sort of healing process and almost like a growing up process to finally playing the woman who saves the women.
After getting the role, Foster wanted to make sure the movie didn't portray the FBI as goofy or inept. You might not know this, but it's fucking buck wild, man. In 1981, John Hinckley Jr. tried to assassinate newly inaugurated President Ronald Reagan. His motivation was to impress Jodie Foster, whom he became obsessed with and stalked after seeing her in Taxi Driver. The FBI protected her during his stalking attempts, and helped out production for this movie, providing their campus and firing range as sets. They figured the film would help them recruit female agents. Clarice makes another appointment with Hannibal, who says that Raspail was an early victim of Buffalo Bills. Lecter only found his patient after he was dead.
Best thing for him, really. His therapy was going nowhere.
Hannibal implies he knows who Buffalo Bill is and offers up the name for a price, a room with a view. Not like the E.M. Forster book, an actual room with like a window and shit. While Starling ponders that deal, in Memphis, Tennessee, a woman sings to Tom Petty with some Fallon caliber lip syncing. She's so into the song, she doesn't realize she's being watched by a Splinter Cell looking Buffalo Bill. He lures her over with an arm cast and some dramatic grunting. When she offers to help him, he maneuvers her into the back of his van. The Good Samaritan is repaid with an off-screen beating and an extended timpani roll.
Yeah, and that's why he's such a good villain, because it preys on obviously, you know, defenseless women in this case, and it also it goes into a real fear that so many of us have, like, you know, why so many people are very reluctant to help others in very weird situations like that because of stuff like this.
Buffalo Bill checks the size tag on her outfit, and it's a fit for him. Only because actress Brooke Smith gained 25 pounds to play the role. Then Bill ruins the dress's resale value and makes off into the night. Clarice is still on her Rocky regiment, but gets pulled out early by her instructor. As they walk past the Universal Studios stunt show, she's informed she's being flown out to West Virginia, where another Buffalo Bill victim has been found. Her death matches all the others. Bill kept her alive for 3 days.
Then he shoots them, skins them, and dumps them.
Jack Crawford is played by Scott Glenn, an ex-Marine who you might know as Stick from Daredevil, or from the GQ article highlighting his geriatric badassery. Nice,
Hell yeah.
dude. He gives Clarice Buffalo Bill's case file, which includes some photos of his first victim, Frederica Bimmel. But just a reminder, and it's tricky with these crime films, pictures of people who we never meet in video form don't go on the kill count. They arrive at the funeral home, where we get a standard clash of feds and local forces. Crawford eases the tension with some good old-fashioned guy talk.
This type of sex crime has certain aspects I just as soon discuss in private. You know what I mean?
They step aside for a man-to-man, which leaves Clarice shut out with condescending stares from the men surrounding her. She escapes the prying eyes by stepping into a room with crying eyes. But she's not crashing a stranger's funeral here. She's just having a traumatic flashback to her father's death, which happened when she was 10. And since it's in video form, I will go ahead and put him on the count. She snaps back to reality when Crawford calls her inside and regains some authority by clearing the room of all its men. I guess there ain't enough coke to share with the whole class. Just kidding. It's something that masks the smell, since not even even the coroner played by producer Kenneth Utt can hide his disgust. Buffalo Bill's sixth victim has had her scalp removed, along with 2 disconcerting diamond-shaped skin segments from her back. Effects artist Carl Fullerton designed the makeup throughout the movie without the use of prosthetics or dummies. The movie's corpses were real actresses who had to lie still while being naked in water or cold conditions.
It was very tough on them in many cases.
I can imagine.
But they did smile when they were finished.
Yeah, they were happy to be done.
Her worth when she sees something down the victim's throat, which gives way to my favorite line delivery of the film.
When a body comes out of the water, lots of times there's like leaves and things in the mouth.
Like leaves and things. But it ain't leaves and things in there. It's an insect cocoon. Clarice quickly preserves the specimen and takes it to the town's dinosaur district. At a museum there, she meets 2 entomologists named Pilcher and Rodin, the latter of whom is played by Dan Butler, who assisted Will Graham in Manhunter. Starling's more comfortable with Bob Bug Guy Briscoe and his buddy Pilcher. She's even a bit receptive to Pilcher's flirting and snow-piercing blue eyes.
You ever go out for cheeseburgers and beer?
Are you hitting on me, Doc?
Aw.
Yes.
And in the book, these two actually
love
end
that
up
line.
together. Unfortunately for movie Pilcher, he stopped short of asking her out when Rodin identifies the insect as a death's head moth, a species that only lives in Asia. These exotic moths have to be specially cared for, which is our cue to visit the home of Buffalo Bill, whose place is part moth nursery, part house of wax. His many moths were provided by insect wrangler Ray Mendez, who also provided the nasty roaches in the final segment of Creepshow. Mendez created a fake cocoon for the autopsy scene, made out of Tootsie Rolls and gummy bears in case the actress swallowed it. He also designed the one they cut open, which squeezed out KY jelly. Gross. Buffalo Bill's lair includes a nightmare wishing well, and stuck at the bottom of it is the woman from Tennessee. Bill's keeping her alive and moisturized, giving her lotion to apply while he and his dog Precious supervise. It gets a little spooktacular during cleanup time, though.
Put the fucking lotion in the basket!
The woman is revealed via news report to be Catherine Martin, the only daughter of U.S. Senator Ruth Martin. With the case involving Congress critters now, Clarice is sent for another meeting with Hannibal, much to the annoyance of Chilton.
He is my patient. I have rights.
Dude thinks of himself as Lecter's greatest rival.
Thinks I'm his nemesis.
Calm down, Ginsburg.
Yeah,
He doesn't
seriously.
give you at all. Clarice offers Hannibal a transfer to a different facility and an annual beach vacation if he gives up Buffalo Bill. Hannibal offers a counter-proposal.
Quid pro quo. I tell you things, you tell me things. Not about this case, though. About yourself.
Despite an earlier order from Crawford to avoid sharing personal information, Clarice recounts the painful memory of how her father was killed trying to stop a robbery. That tasty tidbit earns her an insect analysis from Dr. Lecter, who notes that the moth is symbolic of change.
Caterpillar into chrysalis or pupa. And from thence into beauty. Our Billy wants to change, too.
He advises her to check nearby medical centers, surmising that Buffalo Bill has been rejected for sex reassignment surgery. The Silence of the Lambs has a complicated cultural legacy when it comes to transgender and homosexual representation.
I can see that.
And don't start whining about me getting political, okay? You can't not talk about this stuff when analyzing this film. The movie specifically points out that Buffalo Bill isn't actually trans.
Billy is not a real transsexual. But he thinks he is. He tries to be.
Clarice also chimes in with a defense, although it may seem a bit patronizing.
There's no correlation in the literature between transsexualism and violence. Transsexuals are very passive.
Director Demme was always adamant that Buffalo Bill wasn't gay, and felt that audiences misinterpreted the character. Similarly, actor Ted Levine did a lot of research and discussion with drag queens and the gay community, and considered Buffalo Bill a homophobic heterosexual whose behavior mocked gay men. Still, the movie Serial Killer is a mentally ill crossdresser, which was probably harmful in 1991. Back then, a lot of the audience would have been less familiar with these ideas, and might have assumed that all trans people were like this. The movie was picketed by protesters, who also distributed leaflets at the New York Film Critics Award, which Demme encouraged people to engage with.
He said, I think that was extremely gracefully done. And I think we should all read these and pay very close attention to the message.
In later years, Demme said he should have done more to emphasize the character wasn't gay. Nowadays, we have a much broader spectrum of gay characters in media, so Buffalo Bill is no longer a singular depiction of a differing sexuality. Maybe that's why I've seen some people reclaim him and celebrate the character's camp. Dr. Chilton has been listening in on Hannibal and Clarice's meeting, and finds out the deal Clarice offered was a phony one thrown out by Jack Crawford. He tattles, and it gets Crawford and Starling in trouble with Jack's boss, FBI Director Hayden Burke. He's played by by legendary horror producer Roger Corman in a brief cameo, since Demi worked for him early in his career. It's always weird to see his name in the opening credits. Chilton makes a move and negotiates a real bargainatico with Senator Martin. He's so busy preening about the victory that he leaves his pen behind in Lecter's cell. But I'm sure that won't be a big deal. Hannibal says he'll only reveal Buffalo Bill's identity to the senator in person, so he's flown to Tennessee and wheeled out in front of her wearing a mask. This infamous face wear, which also works as good Royal Rumble attire, went through several iterations in pre-production, some more fencing inspired and others more dumb. Costume designer Colleen Atwood landed on the final look, an unpainted fiberglass mask that has a bit of a Jason edge to it. Maybe since it was made by a New Jersey hockey mask manufacturer. Although he can't nibble anyone through it, Hannibal can still share Buffalo Bill's real name. He says it's Louis' friend, and that he met him once because he was lovers with his patient Benjamin Raspel. You know, the head in a jar guy. The deal is going well, but Hannibal almost blows it when he starts talking about the senator's nips.
Toughened your nipples, didn't it?
He brings it back by giving the senator Buffalo Bill's address, his physical description, and a compliment.
Oh, and Senator, just one more thing. Love your suit.
It's hard to imagine a time when Anthony Hopkins wasn't a household name, but originally, Sean Connery was the more commercial-friendly pick for Hannibal. When he turned it down, Demi cast Hopkins based on his performance in The Elephant Man. Jodie Foster didn't get to talk to him until they were already in production.
We did a table reading of the entire movie, and he scared me to death.
Oh!
At least the feeling was mutual.
And I was scared to speak to you. I thought, you just won another Oscar.
In exchange for the intel, Hannibal was moved to a cell in the middle of a museum, which in real life was the Soldiers and Sailors Museum in Pittsburgh, PA. It's an excellent tableau for a sophisticated sociopath. He's gotta love being in there. Clarice arrives for one final encounter with him, but careful girl, don't laugh at his jokes too much.
People will say we're in love.
She says she's figured out the info he gave the senator is bogus.
Your anagrams are showing, Doctor. Louis' friend. Iron sulfide, also known as fool's gold.
She pries for the truth, but he reminds her of their quid pro quo agreement. In an uncomfortable close-up, Starling recalls how she was sent to live with her cousins on a ranch. She ran away after hearing their sheep being slaughtered overnight, a sound Lecter says probably haunts her.
Wake up in the dark and hear the screaming of the lamb.
Huh. I think they got the movie title wrong. Her quid pro bro gives another clue and says Buffalo Bill's motivation isn't sexual. He does, however, covet his victims' bodies in a certain way, and Clarice should know all about that.
Don't you feel eyes moving over your body, Clarice?
I mean, how could she
Yes,
not?
throughout
So
the
much of
entire
movie
movie.
features Clarice being stared at by men.
Perfect.
Demi made it more obvious by casting tall dudes to tower over the diminutive Foster.
It's one of those things that, like, because I love to, like, pay attention to, like, these little details and see if they pay off later on just for fun. And when I saw them doing that, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That it's happened more than once now. There's got to be some sort of payoff to it. And then, bam, there's that line right there.
Emphasized it even more by shooting most scenes from Clarice's point of view, with characters staring directly into the camera lens. Starling and Lecter are interrupted by Chilton and a blink and you'll miss him George Romero. They take her away before Lecter can reveal Bill's real name. As Clarice takes a speedy plane back home, Hannibal draws a speedy portrait of his favorite gal. His guards arrive to deliver dinner and handcuff him to cell bars to prevent any funny business. But it's finally time for
Very
Chilton's
funny.
pen to come into play, as Hannibal uses it to pick the lock. He slaps the cuffs back onto Lieutenant Boyle, then sinks his teeth into Sergeant Pepper.
Nom nom.
That must have tasted pretty bland though, since Hannibal seasons him with pepper spray. Then he gives Boyle an off-screen beating before celebrating the new freedom of his wrists. Downstairs, muffled gunshots and elevator movement sends this 90s police squad up to the 5th floor. Yeah, guy, I'm sure Hannibal's up on the ceiling behind you. What are you doing? There's nowhere to be seen, but they do find Boyle's disemboweled corpse, which Hannibal has strung up in an impressive angel display.
Yeah.
Production designer Chris Zia based this on a painting by Francis Bacon. Pembry is discovered still breathing, but with a face that looks a little worse for wearing. Or, sorry, worse for wear.
Oh, you look real good there. Yeah, you look
Yeah, very convincing, dude. As
Yeah,
Pembry is rolled
extremely
away
so.
by paramedics, the officers notice blood leaking from the roof of the elevator.
Who
The
could
SWAT
that
team
be?
is called in, and they find what appears to be Hannibal's body, but soon realize it's a dead Sergeant Pembry, who's not only missing his uniform, but also his face. That means the person
There's
wore it out
the
was
face.
Hannibal, who now reveals himself in the ambulance. Clarice is told of Hannibal's escape by Ardelia, who also tells her he killed the ambulance crew. That means I'll count the 2 paramedics who were with him, one who got in the driver's seat and one who was shown in the back when Hannibal took off Pembry's face. The 2 students look over Buffalo Bill's case file again, and Clarice realizes something about his first victim, Frederica Bimmel. If he truly coveted her, like Hannibal insists, he was probably familiar with her and even saw her every day.
God damn, Clarice.
He knew her.
She drives to Frederica's hometown of Belvedere, Ohio to meet the girl's father, who looks like he subscribes to the Vivitch School of Grief Management. He lets her look around his daughter's bedroom, where she finds some hidden pictures confirming that Frederica had a secret lover. But she doesn't figure everything out until she looks in the closet and sees a dressmaking pattern reminiscent of the skin bill cut from his 6th victim.
He's making himself a woman's suit, Mr. Crawford, out of real women.
Crawford tells her good job, but chill out. They've already cracked the case. Based on Starling's work with the bug cocoon, they track down a tailor by the name of James Gum.
Customs had some paper on it. They stopped a carton 2 years ago at LAX. Live caterpillars from Suriname.
Clarice wants to join Crawford at Gum's home address outside Chicago, but he tells her to stay put. The men will handle the dangerous work. They need her to find evidence linking Gum to Frederica's murder. She ends up getting the address of Frederica's old employer, a local woman named Mrs. Lippman. Back in Bill's House of Horrors, Catherine's still down in a hole, losing her soul. She'd like to fly, but her wings have been so denied, and her only chance at freedom is a page out of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Come on, take that boat. Come on.
Wow, that is one seriously fluffy dog.
It really is a fluffy one.
Boy, the man we now know as James Gum is having a makeover montage set to Goodbye Horses. It's a song director Demi first heard a demo of when riding in musician Hugh Lazarus's taxicab. He included it in his earlier film, Married to the Mob, but the song has become synonymous with this scene, which sees Gum dance into the camera and infamously tuck away his Jane Jimmy and gumballs. James Gum, whose name sounds like they forgot to finish writing it, is played by Ted Levine, last seen on the kill count in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. He improvised this dance scene and created it on set with Demi. It wasn't in the original screenplay. Crawford touches down in Chicago and joins a SWAT team surrounding Gum's home. In his basement, Gum discovers that Catherine has managed to lure Precious into the hole with her. While Buffalo Bill might be a heartless killer, he does have a soft spot for his good boy.
Hey, don't you hurt my dog!
Don't you make me hurt your dog!
The situation escalates further as an undercover officer rings the doorbell, ready to burst Gum's bubble. Gum arms himself and leaves to answer the door, but as the FBI storms in, we realize they're at the wrong address. The person ringing Gum's doorbell is actually Clarice. Editor Craig McKay didn't initially cut the scene with parallel action, but Demi decided it'd play better with both scenes happening simultaneously.
It really did.
It's a masterpiece fake-out that's been referenced a bunch, most recently in The Black Phone. Gum gives a fake name and claims to remember Frederica only in passing.
Oh, wait. Was she a great big fat person?
You gotta work on your icebreakers, Gum.
Seriously,
He chews over his options and invites Starling inside, where she starts to grow suspicious after seeing a giant roll of shrink wrap and textile materials. And, oh yeah, the friggin' moth. Time to pull out her bazooka on this Joe. Clarice orders him to stick around, but the wriggly Gum just giggles and runs away. She follows him downstairs and discovers Gum's ghastly experiment, a partially finished woman suit made from the skin of his victims. Buffalo Bill was the amalgamation of several real-life serial killers, most prominently Ed Gein for his skin suit and the messy state of his house. His fake injury kidnapping ruse was inspired by Ted Bundy, while his basement pit prison is based on Gary Heidnik of Philadelphia. Clarice busts down another door where she discovers what the internet tells me is the body of Mrs. Lippman, which Gum has left to lose its flavor in the bathtub. Oh man, it's gonna get all moldy! That prevents Clarice from getting a better look, while Gum dons his night vision goggles. Are they heavy? Then they're expensive.
Hey, there they are.
Clarice is left scrambling in the dark, and Gum gets cocky with his stalking, reaching out to almost stroke her hair. He tries to double his pleasure with the use of a gun, but that cockiness is too loud, so Clarice spins around and shoots him dead. It shatters a window and lets in sunlight, allowing us to see him bleed out proper. Backup arrives to take care of Catherine and her new dog, and since defeating Gum has put her in the big league, Clarice gets an FBI badge. At the graduation party, she catches up with Ardelia, Pilcher, Roden, and is that a kid? Whose kid is that? Crawford pulls her aside for a Paul Hollywood handshake of approval, but he's not the only one who wants to congratulate her.
Starling.
Well, Clarice.
Yes.
Have the lambs stopped screaming?
Hannibal is calling from Jamaica, but only briefly, since Dr. Chilton has just arrived.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner.
An old friend for dinner.
Stalking after Dr. Chilton, wearing his finest Panama hat and linen suit. How many people in this movie got Buffalo killed? Let's find out and get to the numbers. Sorry, what am I supposed to do with this?
Oh!
All right, here.
All right. Have the lotion.
Weird guy.
Yeah, very weird.
I counted 10 kills in The Silence of the Lambs, with the victims consisting of 8 men and 2 women. That gives us this pie chart, which would go well with a nice Chianti, and a count and gender breakdown that's only been seen 3 times before on this show. Ugh, Jack Frost. With a runtime of 119 minutes, that gave us a kill on average just about every 12 minutes. I'll give the golden chainsaw for coolest kill to Lieutenant Boyle. It's one of the bloodier kills in the movie, and his post-mortem display is disturbing and strangely beautiful. Dollar City for lamest kill goes to the paramedics, who died off screen and without a fun body reveal later. And that's it. The Silence of the Lambs came out on Valentine's Day in 1991 and was the #1 movie for 5 weekends, grossing $272 million.
Wow.
It wouldn't have a sequel until 10 years later, though, which I'll be looking at next week.
Yay!
Until then, I'm James A. Janice. This has been the Kill Count.
On the next Kill
Yay!
Count. 10 years after
Preview.
The Silence of the Lambs, Clarice Starling is back, and she hasn't changed a bit.
I'm Special Agent Starling.
Well,
No, you're not.
aside from her now being played by Julianne Moore. But hey, at least Hannibal Lecter hasn't changed.
So what do you think?
Wait, what? Oh,
What?
sorry, that's Gary Oldman, covered in prosthetics and playing
Oh.
a Venture Brothers villain.
Huh.
Sir Anthony is still our Hannibal the Cannibal, and he's ready for a little taste of Italy.
I've enjoyed many excellent meals there.
The Good Doctor cordially invites you to this Ridley Scott-directed sequel. Other guests include a perpetually hungover, chain-smoking Italian cop,
I am a professional.
a wealthy, sadistic former patient who looks like a rebooted Freddy Krueger,
That's almost funny now.
a sleazy Ray Liotta who's out to prove he's got as much brain as brawn,
Wouldn't mind having a go with you right now if you want to reconsider.
In the gym, anytime, no pads.
and a whole lot of man-eating pigs.
Oh boy.
Who was right?
Yeah.
Should've called this the Silence of the Hams. RSVP to this nightmare dinner party
Okay.
by watching Hannibal for yourself this week. Why not? Then on Friday, grab yourself a straw full of scotch and watch the Kill Count, only on Dead Meat.
Okie dokie. Here we go.
Hannibal. Currently be watched on the picture.
All right. Well, as I said, and as you can probably tell throughout my talking about this movie along with James, I freaking loved every single second of this movie. It was just so damn good from top to bottom. I mean, the fact that it won so many Academy Awards is not at all a shock to me. And I wish more horror movies would sort of get that recognition, but this was certainly a perfect one for it. I mean, you have a perfect villain in Buffalo Bill, who, as I said, sort of preys on his victims by making it look like he needs help, and then just sort of lures him into the van, which again sort of preys on that real fear that we all have, and someone taking advantage of the kindness of other people. And then you got like throughout the movie too, like everything seems to flow so perfectly, right? Because you have there's questions that are brought up, there are certain situations that are brought up, and you're not sure how it happens, but like as you watch the movie and as you pay attention, you see, okay, that's why this happened, and then it just, you know, Clarice just figures everything out, and it feels so natural. Nothing is at all forced. Everything has a purpose. Even the ending isn't so cut and dry, as we saw Bill bring back that night vision goggles, which again, you know, if you pay attention early on, you see that he brings them out again. And then you have that little showdown with Clarice, and when he shuts the lights off, and then that just sort of tense moment of like, is she gonna get him? Is he gonna get the better of her? Like, you're not really sure what happens. It was just so perfect. I think it took what Manhunter did and definitely made it so much better. That's not to say that Manhunter wasn't a bad movie. It was just, as James said, much different than this one. And like, this is absolutely perfect. It's easily one of the best horror movies that I've ever seen. That will do it for me here, though. Comment down below. Let me know, what did you think about The Silence of the Lambs? Please leave a like if you enjoyed. Please check all those links I have for you down in the description below. Lastly, and most importantly, I want to give a huge shout out to all my $5 and up supporters on Patreon: Luchador, Cruising, Wolverine310, GBN, Kester Kronich, Amber K, Joshi, Chris Curtis, Haley Machinardi, Ann Perry, Larka, Foz Cacophony, Dancing Viru, Morgan Page, Kaylee McKinney, Izzy, Misa2, Lily the Snoopy Fan, Nunsei Singh, Lauren, Jenny the Swiftie, Allison the Aesthetic Girl, and Jonathan. And if you too like to have a shout out at each and every one of my videos, please head on over to patreon.com/TheDamnReactor for more. And I'll see you guys next time.